Hello and welcome to the Rest is Entertainment Questions Edition.
Questions and Answers Edition. And you are?
I'm Marina. Oh no, I really thought I got it. I'm Marina Hyde.
And I'm Richard Osman.
Right.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the Professional Zone. I have got a question to kick off straight away just to sort of finesse my way past that catastrophic intro once more. Charlie Eade says, how good or bad is location catering? And is there a pecking order on who goes first? Is it the stars, then the crew, or is it a free-for-all?
See how Charlie Eade introduces himself with his name.
Yeah.
And then you know where you are.
Could learn a lot from him and almost everyone else who sent in a question ever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, crew catering, by and large, is one of the greatest things in the world, I would say. Occasionally there'll be studios you go to where they have notoriously bad catering, but by and large, catering is great because you've got to keep everybody happy, and it's the single most important thing to the crew.
100%.
No, the two most important thing to crew: what's catering like? When do we finish?
Yeah,
you know, and if you finish 2 minutes early, it's like the greatest dream that there's ever been. But catering is an absolute obsession to everybody working on any sort of set, any TV show, any film, and it's completely different on certain shows. If you're making a big TV show and everyone is working at the same time, then there's just a mad rush for catering. You know, at the end of your morning's filming. By and large, the talent might go back to their dressing rooms and have catering brought to them.
Yes, it depends.
It depends. But
on my show, God bless America as well, because it's called Craft Services, by the way.
In America.
In America. Well, it's called, and if you're making a show for an American money and they've paid the catering bill, you're calling it Craft Services and you're pretty grateful. They did, on our set, honestly, there's a permanent van. They're doing you ginger shots. There's snacks all the way through the day, like homemade stuff. It's amazing. It's genuinely amazing. And then you would typically break for half an hour lunch, and then they have huge numbers of choices, but we were very lucky and our lunch was brought to us. By the way, if you're looking at actors on big movies and things like that, I mean, there are certain actors who, people like Robert Downey Jr., they've got a sort of sushi chef doing it all for them. They've got a compound. They're never going near any of this stuff, and then also not eating that food. I have heard, on a Wes Anderson movie, and I can't remember which one it was, he just said, we're not going to have lunch. We're just going to have it shoot continuously, but we'll just put soup on. Sorry, what?
Huh?
Sorry, what food product?
Sorry, soup now?
Soup now? And there was such a revolt, a mutiny amongst the crew that in the end he was like, I didn't realise, if you're lugging huge bits of equipment around, they sort of want a steak, really.
Yes, you want something you need a knife and fork for.
Yeah, and it needs to be hearty, and it's a long day. At night, sometimes if you're doing night shoots, people will, because as you say, the other most important thing is when do we finish?
Yes.
People would rather get their food while they themselves feel they've got a slight break in proceedings, and then take that extra half hour and not have to go home at sort of 5:30 rather than 5.
Yeah, it's exactly it. So on certain shows, you'll have a mandated lunch hour, which is usually about an hour and 15. And there are certain days, certainly when you're filming, where if all of the heads of the department agree, you can do an hour and you can leave a little bit early. But there are certain people who've been absolutely working their socks off all morning saying, no, I'm taking the full hour and 15. And if even one department
that's long.
says...
We only had half an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's a difference in TV and movies, isn't it? But yeah, on a movie or a sitcom set or anything like that, certainly if you're out on the field, there tend to be lovely big double-decker buses.
Yeah.
That tends to be the absolute classic catering thing, is big old-fashioned London double-decker buses that, and there'll be like kind of hatches where you can go and get your food, and then you take it onto the bus and you sit with, whoever you're with. There tends to be 2 buses. One will be for supporting artists, which is extras and so on, and one will be for cast and crew, which will be the kind of big members of the crew can sit on that bus. By and large, people do mix. There is some mixing. There are some actors who, for lots of reasons, will stay in their Winnebago because they've got a big scene that afternoon, they want to learn it. But lots of actors will go and sit with the crew because they enjoy that as well. If an actor joins the queue, by and large, people will go, oh, no, you go in front. And lots of actors will go, oh, no, I'm queuing up and saying where there are. Some actors will go, oh, that's very kind. Sorry, because I just want to get back to the Winnie as soon as possible. But lots of actors will be like, no, I'll take my place in the queue and we'll sit down to whatever seat is in front of them. But I can understand sometimes when the director or producer, sometimes they just want to get their food and head off because they do have work to do. They work over lunch in the way that some of the departments don't. But it's it is fascinating. There is a pecking order, and some people will absolutely apply that pecking order. But often when people don't, you think, oh, that's interesting. You see a different side of people when they're very happy to, stand wherever they are in the queue.
And the craft services will get a credit in the credits of the TV show. Yeah. So it will say craft services provided by, because it's absolutely vital, and sometimes it feels like they should be, above the title.
And there are 3 or 4 really big catering companies who do these gigs, and it's a really big industry. I always remember there was someone called Gloria Wild who used to do food for lots of shows, and I think her company's called Wild Food or something. And I always said it should be called Food Gloria's Food. Would be an amazing name for it. And bands have the same thing. So bands will have their own catering that they'll take out on tour with them a lot of the time. So it's an amazing industry, but it's incredible how much of creativity and any creative endeavor is absolutely, it's like Napoleon said, his army marched on their stomach.
Yeah.
And almost all TV shows are made on your stomach as well if you're not feeding people properly. And all morning you're thinking, oh, when's lunch?
Yeah.
It's so, you just say, oh, it's going to be lunch soon, isn't it? You could be doing the most emotional scene. You'll be watching any movie, and you could be watching just unbelievable acting, like a Tudor wife is breaking down because her husband has been murdered, and she's just found out that her brother has died in a war overseas, and she's just like absolutely falling to pieces. And that not only is every single person behind the camera, but she also in their head is going, oh, it's lunch after this.
Yeah, I've already had the WhatsApp that's given me all the choices. I've said what I want.
Yeah.
And this is so exciting. It's going to be waiting in a little polystyrene container when I get back to my trailer. I just can't wait.
Every single scene is in relation to when is lunch or when was lunch. So the scene before lunch is just everyone's like, I'm going to give this everything I've got, and I'm not going to mess it up. There's going to be no retakes. No, the first scene of a day, sometimes you're like, oh, we're going to go again. Sorry, that was me. I absolutely went. It's so good. Are we ready? Yep, happy. Okay, let's go again. Sorry, John. The scene before lunch, none of that. It's, I think we got it there. Yeah, happy? Everyone happy? We all happy? Everyone, lights happy? Lights go. Yeah, I think you're happy, lights. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's absolutely fine. The scene after lunch is always people are like, oh, God, just because they've just had a baked potato.
They've had so many side orders. Like I've had a baked potato, some macaroni cheese, some other stuff. Yes, I've had a lot of things.
My brother always says when Suede are in the studio, you can always tell the take that's just after lunch. They call it the baked potato take because suddenly you go, that's quite slow. That sounds quite leaden and plodding. Why is that? You think, well, because you've just had a baked potato. And on shows that film 3 or 4 or 5 shows a day, I can always tell if they've just had lunch or if they're just about to have lunch. But it's sitting in an edit as well. So if you're in an edit, you're there all day. You're absolutely stuck. You're in the edit. You're not going anywhere. You're in a darkened room, and all edit suites have runners who come and take lunch orders, and then go and get the lunch. And the single longest period in human history, the most difficult time frame there is to endure, is the time between you ordering your food and it's arriving. Because you're like, oh, I know. The second you've ordered your food, all I can think about is all I can think about now. And whatever's happening on the screen, you're like, I'm not concentrating at all. So every time like someone walks down the corridor, you think,
is that it?
Is that my Nando's? I wonder if that's my Nando's. You think, oh, that wasn't my Nando's. I always think the best thing on any catering, because usually recordings start very early. Certainly, if you're doing a movie or a location shoot, I love a location breakfast.
Oh, it's so terrific.
Oh, you turn up in a field. It's like 7 a.m. Everyone's doing their job, but there's just a hatch open and bacon rolls are being prepared.
We used to have people make you an omelette in front of you. Oh, it was so terrific. There were so many different choices. Yeah.
God, that really is American money you've got there.
God bless them.
I'm heading down to the Thursday Motor Club set for the first time next week, so I shall report back.
Oh, their craft will be amazing.
You would think so, right? Chris Columbus doesn't. He's not going to march on an empty stomach.
It will be terrific.
Yeah, honestly, it's such a great question. So thank you, Charlie, because it drives. Now I think when I started answering, I was like, oh yeah, I know something about this, and then you think, oh no, hold on. That's everything.
It's everything. If you scrimp on it at all, people will hate you so much really quickly.
Yeah. And then after lunch, it's always, it's never kind of, what do we think about this next scene? How are we going to, everyone goes, oh, what did you have? Did you have the lasagna? I had it, Or did you have the risotto? Yeah, but with the sweet potato, like that's all anyone's talking about. A question now from Sam Evans, a very topical one about Wimbledon. As it's summertime, this means Wimbledon is on. I read the BBC holds broadcasting rights until 2024, and so I ask, what happens next? If I'm correct, the competition has to be shown on a free-to-air broadcast, and does this mean it will go to the highest bidder between BBC, ITV, Channel 4, etc., or will it be kept simple with BBC simply signing a new deal as they're considered the home of the sport?
That is a very good question, Sam. They have, I think that it's the longest unbroken relationship in some. I think it's 97 years in terms of sort of rights holding. I don't think we even called it that.
BBC and Wimbledon, yeah.
BBC and Wimbledon. By the way, I think it's a very successful relationship. I can't see that it would change. Also, if you ever went to the All England Club where they hold the tournament about, 25, 30 years ago, the difference between it now, it genuinely looks like Chelsea Flower Show. It's unbelievable. There is not one ugly or non-perfectly painted corner. The planting everywhere is so beautiful and amazing. It is the most highly maintained. It's absolutely extraordinary to go and sort of walk around if you're lucky enough to, even if you just get a ground ticket and you can walk around, which is always fun. It is one of the crown jewels of sport. Now, these are the things that are listed by law, and they are said to be of major importance to society, and that's Wimbledon, Grand National, the Derby, the World Cup, the Euros, the FA Cup, the Scottish Cup finals, Rugby World Cup final, Rugby League Challenge Cup final, the Olympics, the Paralympics, and Wimbledon. Now, obviously sport in this country, I mean, that's a whole separate entire podcast series forever about how badly it's run. And, it's really hard to always pick who's the worst person at running sport in this country. But the ECB, English Cricket Board, is definitely, for me, always up there. That they wanted, cricket has not been listed since 1998. This is a big problem, okay? I think the Ashes should definitely be listed. I think that should be on free to air. And the ECB, it was once nearly going to be relisted, and the ECB spent hundreds and hundreds of £1,000s lobbying so that it wouldn't go back to free to air. And as a result, cricket audiences have really dwindled. But they say, we want to reach children and all this sort of stuff. They say a lot of absolute rubbish. And I'll tell you, what's the best way to reach? I can't remember what all their initiatives are called. They used to have something called Chance to Shine. They got things like that. But that's going to come to your school for one day. What's going to reach children more? Is it Chance to Shine maybe coming to your school for one day? Or is it the chance to, when you haven't got much to do as a child, as a teenager, whatever, getting to watch a whole test series and just thinking, what is this? And actually, against your better judgment, or perhaps in favour of your better judgment, just becoming absorbed by it. It is so much. I wish that they would get relisted. I think the Ashes should be relisted, and it should become one of these crown jewels like Wimbledon is. Sorry, that was a bit of a soapbox.
But what do we think is going to happen to Wimbledon? Do we have any
I can't see why on earth you would not go with the BBC. It's been so successful all that time. And unless that they were, like the ECB, felt like they could get more money for something worse, then I don't think that they would make that decision. I do think it's so associated with the BBC, and I very much hope it sticks with the BBC because they've done a terrific job over the years. Yeah. Come on.
Well, that's the interesting thing that all sports have to think about, which is, do they want more money or do they want the exposure? And Wimbledon's been very, very smart. So yes, different sports have different equations to make, don't they, about whether they want more money from Sky or whether they want more exposure on a terrestrial channel. So Wimbledon has to be on a terrestrial channel. It's got this amazing relationship with the BBC. I think they understand that it feels like the most extraordinary thing. What a brand Wimbledon is, and the BBC's been a huge part in that, and they're super, super smart, the Wimbledon people. So I would be shocked if that went anywhere. I think you're quite right about cricket. I think when Channel 4 got the rights to show like the last day of the Ashes and things like that, and it just opens it out to a huge new audience.
And it was wonderful that Channel 4 went for that and did that, and I really wish we could see more. I wish by law the Ashes had to be, for instance, on terrestrial.
I will say this about it, which is interesting, that something like cricket, you have to clear a schedule.
I know, and I know it's hard
for a test match, and that actually is very, very difficult for the BBC. And if I am the ECB, I know that Sky can have an entirely dedicated channel showing the entire thing, showing every single moment. The same, you watch the snooker, and now with the iPlayer they can show every single minute of every single game. But it's hard for a terrestrial channel to clear the schedules. You can use
something like BBC Three for it during the day.
Yes, exactly. But people, that's almost like having it on Sky, and because people just won't go and find it. People are furious if they get to 5:59 and they go, "Oh, we're leaving the snooker now," but it continues on iPlayer. Honestly, a huge amount of the audience will not go over to iPlayer. They'll be like, "Oh, I was enjoying that. Oh, now I can't watch the last frame." You go, "What?" I mean, you can. I mean, it's available to you. So, a sport like darts, for example, it's one of the few examples where you think, I mean, that has been made by Sky.
Yeah.
By the fact that Sky, it's great for Sky because it can fill Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, whenever you want. A tournament can go on all week. It gives them loads and loads of content. It's great for darts because people can watch every single episode of it, and it's not something that you're going to put across 5 hours on BBC Two. So that's kind of perfect. It's got exactly the audience darts wants. Darts makes a fortune by selling out big live venues, which absolutely have the same demographic as that Sky Sports audience. But something like Wimbledon, something like the World Snooker, that idea of just being a fixture, which is the sort of thing that only terrestrial TV can give you, is an absolute dream. But so I would also be shocked if Wimbledon moves from the BBC. Of course, ITV and Channel 4 could buy it if they wished. I think it's such a perfect marriage of
me too.
sport and medium. And the one thing with Wimbledon is they are very, very, very good with their legacy. Yep. They're very, very good with it, and they understand what Wimbledon is and what it represents. And there's absolutely zero reason that if ITV offered 15% more, I think that the All England Club are absolutely the sort of organisation that would go, do you know what, we're fine. Is always the US Masters, where the people in charge of that tournament would not even let the channel show the first 6 holes or show the first 3 or 4 hours on a Thursday. They were like, no, you just
contempt for the audience.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to put the score up.
Yeah.
We're not how declassé do you think we are? They're the worst. The contempt for the viewer there,
Yeah.
and then you've got to watch. Oh, there's that awful ceremony at the end where you get the green jacket in some ghastly little cabin, and some man hands it to you.
The butler's cabin. You're saying is a ghastly little cabin.
Yeah, I am. I'm saying it. Yeah, it's dreadful.
The greatest cabin in all of sport. Okay. But it's listen, it's horses for courses, apart from the Grand National. So yes, Wimbledon, I would put a large bet on it staying. Of course, I wouldn't put a large bet on anything these days.
No.
Because it's now frowned upon.
Shall we go to a break, Richard?
Let's do exactly that.
This episode is brought to you by Sky. Sky is home to some of the very best shows, including, and we're very excited about this, the brand new season of House of the Dragon.
That's right. Season 2, House of the Dragon, is streaming right now on Sky. You're an enormous fan, aren't you?
I am an enormous fan. And if you're not already an enormous fan, you can catch up with the first season. But the new one has just dropped, and the hype is justified. The first episode is brilliant. Can't wait to see more of what's going to happen. Now everyone's at war. And more shocking twists and turns.
There's a lot of dragon action in this.
There's a huge amount of dragons. There's going to be 5 new dragons.
The clue's in the name, right?
Yeah. House of many dragons, but actual real name of the show, House of the Dragon.
Best dragon?
Best dragon. There's a massive one that hasn't been claimed yet called Vermithor. That's huge.
Vermithor.
That's a very powerful dragon. There's a little one called Moondancer.
House of the Dragon is available now exclusively on Sky.
Go to sky.com to find out more.
Welcome back, everybody. Greg Reeder has a question. Greg asks, I enjoyed hearing your recent best movie sequels selections. I wonder if you could choose your 3 favourite movie remakes, ideally ones that improve on the original. Marina, what do you think? You like a top 3 now, I think.
And I understand that I need to do it in reverse order.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to mention a load of them at the start that maybe didn't make the cut, because that's what I want to do.
Yeah, that's
and I
better.
am making this format my own to some extent.
Yeah.
I would probably Casino Royale. That's the original one with David Niven.
Yeah.
That reinvented the whole of Bond, but I'm not putting it at number 3. I just want to say that. Some good ones that I like. Yeah. That's a very good remake. Okay, this is hot. Cape Fear, because I can't, because the original is also brilliant, so I'm unsure about that. Okay, I will now do the 3.
What we call the business end.
What we call the business end. At number 3, it is Scarface, the Al Pacino remake. Yes,
is that a remake?
Yes, that is a remake.
Didn't know that.
Number 2, The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum remake, which is extra, and I absolutely love that, and I love Jeff Goldblum, and I still love him. And number one, which I might have mentioned this before because I just think it's so interesting, is the Maltese Falcon, which you will know as the, obviously it's a Dashiell Hammett story, but you will know the Humphrey Bogart version of it.
Mhm.
It is so interesting because Warner Brothers made 3 versions of that film between 1931 and 1941. And it's just a useful example of how in those days when they were spending money on all these sorts of things, you could do that with a property that you owned. They would just think, well, that wasn't quite right. Let's have another go. They put a sort of Latin lover in it once.
Yeah.
And then in the end, it's such an example of how if you get the right writers, the right star, the right talent, all of these things, then finally it comes together and you're like, oh, of course, it's a Humphrey Bogart movie and it's the Maltese Falcon. So I like it for that it's just so extraordinary. The idea nowadays, it's unthinkable that you'd see the same thing, the same property remade 3 times in a decade by the same studio. But it's sort of amazing that they did that, and that the final one, you're like, I see, that's what it's supposed to be.
But it's true. It also shows you how difficult it is to adapt anything.
Yeah,
because everyone on all of those versions was absolutely trying their best.
Yeah, thinking
just sometimes it comes good. Worst ever remake. I would say I did not enjoy the Italian Job remake.
Oh yes, that is very, very Why would you do it?
Yeah.
I've got to say, I did see the Steven Spielberg Westside Story, and I thought, which was almost like a sort of shot-for-shot version of why would you remake the original Westside Story? I have no idea why he did it.
When I watched that, literally Ingrid, I looked at her like within 2 seconds. She cried from the first note of the first song to the final note of the final song. She was weeping throughout that entire movie. It was an absolute delight to see. And I'd never seen the original.
Remake.
Yeah, the remake.
You've never seen it, yeah. I mean, I like the principles. I just didn't know why you do it. It seemed to me such an odd thing, especially if you're Steven Spielberg. It seemed to me an odd thing to do.
I'll tell him.
What?
He's coming over soon. I'll say,
okay.
Steve. I got some.
Always Mr. Spielberg.
Not to me.
Oh.
I'll say what I want.
I think. Ooh.
Listen. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So Stephen,
you'll come back and you'll say, I just called him Steve the whole time. And
I'll say
you absolutely missed it the whole way through.
Listen, Stevie, I've got someone who would like to meet you. Who's got an opinion for you about your Westside Story movie that you're very, very proud of and that you worked incredibly hard at. Would you like to? No, she's here now.
I think he's aware
Marina.
of how people felt about that movie.
No, people loved that movie. They did great business.
No, I'm afraid it didn't. It did not do great business. It was essentially a flop.
I am going to introduce you to Spielberg.
That would be. Can you imagine how excited? I would be completely unable to speak.
Well, you're going to have to be able to speak, so you have to tell him what you think about Westside Story.
I apologise for my thoughts on Westside Story.
You just said, listen.
By the way, I love all your other ones.
Oh no, hold on. Actually, now I think about it, there's a couple. Let's do. If someone could ask us the question, we shouldn't really. Best 3 Spielberg movies.
Oh yes, please ask me that. Right? Yeah. Can someone ask this for next week, please? Because I really want to do that.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
And that would be so hard for me to do.
Yeah, and also if you've got the name that's the same as like a celebrity or something, that's always fun.
Yeah.
But that's me producing on the floor. Essentially, like next week, I go. Oh, I have a question from Daniel Craig. He's asking, what are your 3 favourite? I have some any other business that's reminding me of 2 bits of any other business that have come up from our question and answer thing. We talked about TV studio audiences, and I said that Question of Sport had the longest waiting list for an audience, and I got a message from I don't know if you heard of him, Jeremy Clarkson, and he said so. Question of Sport at its height had a waiting list, I think, of 25 years to get on the in the studio audience. Jeremy Clarkson said, there's 2 messages about 10 hours apart.
Right.
Okay. The first one is this. Question of Sport had the longest waiting list for the audience. I'm imagining tone. Question of Sport had the longest waiting list for the audience. Top Gear at its height had a waiting list, as I recall, of 80 years.
Oh, that's incredible.
10 hours later. Or was it 18? It was really long either way. So listen, if it was 80 years, then it's a longer waiting list.
He's bought a pub now.
Yeah, and also
I will watch that Clarkson's pub.
But also his brewery is one of the fastest growing businesses in the UK. I saw the other day. I saw
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's having a hell of a couple of years, isn't he?
I'm sure it'll be finding its way onto screen, but I would definitely watch the pub.
Yeah, you'd want to be in the Clarkson business.
Yeah.
I also had a message. Josh Widdicombe very kindly sent us a message last week about why comedians introduce themselves, and he gave what sounded like the definitive answer. Because we trust Josh. We like Josh. However, it was not the definitive answer. And I tell you, who gave me the definitive answer, Dara O'Brien. So Dara says, and by the way, it doesn't mention Josh at all, but this is a real kick in the nuts for Josh. This is a real John Steele crotch from O'Brien.
see.
Yeah. He's saying, hey, enjoying the podcast. That's how you start a text, isn't it? Clarkson didn't say
You're
that.
about to get a ticking off.
Yes, exactly.
That is an intro that just says, I'm about to tick you off for something
listen,
you said on it.
I'm enjoying the podcast. I kind of see the point of it.
Yeah.
Love Marina. That's what anyone ever says to me if they talk about the podcast.
No,
oh my God,
I'm afraid it's
Marina
the
is
other
so
way round.
brilliant.
There we go.
And you go, is she? Is she? Have you heard her try and do a rundown of a top 10?
I was faultless this week.
Yeah, you were, to be fair. Enjoying the podcast. We do a live intro each night because that way we can localize it. Otherwise, we'd have to record 160 separate versions with a different theatre name in each one. There, itch scratched. So that's essentially saying to Widdicombe, what you said was nonsense, which is, it's just there's no one else around to do it. Dara, I think that sounds very, very sensible. He goes on to say, I now want to hire Alan Dedicote, he's the great BBC announcer, to just sit in the room all day and say, Dunfermline in Alhambra, Watford Coliseum, as the camera slowly pulls out. But yeah, that makes sense, right? And why did Widdicombe not come up with that?
Can I just say, thank you very much, Josh Widdicombe, for giving us the answer in the first place.
I mean, up to a
Don't try and
point.
put people off. I think there's ways they can both be right.
Do you think? But I think, listen, Josh knows that Dara he knows who the daddy is there, right?
I have no idea.
And it ain't Josh.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to get a message this week saying, hi, enjoying the podcast a little less than I was before.
Josh
Widdicombe, by the way.
Yeah.
I would like to, yes.
Josh Widdicombe, by the way. Love Marina. Josh, if you're listening, that's a real shot across the bows from Dara O'Brien, I would say. If you have anything to say about it, then please. But yeah, that's...
You're just trying to sort of nurture comedian beef now on the podcast.
Oh, you know what? Like
the conduit for it.
Like that needs to be nurtured.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd love it all to have to go to.
Yeah, exactly. They are. I should point out they are very good friends, but only one of them can be right.
Sorry, can I just cut this off with a question about football?
Of course you can.
Pitchside
Yes,
reporters.
of course
I
you
think
can.
Just tactically, Tom Heaps, Richard, would like
That's
to
a good
know,
name.
why do pitchside football pundits use handheld microphones rather than lapel mics like their studio colleagues?
Thank you, Tom. Tom Heaps. Do you like Tom? Tom Heaps. Yeah. A lapel mic you would use by and large in a studio where there's no wind, there's no noise, there's no crowd noise or anything like that. If you are pitchside, firstly, there's a lot of noise behind you. Secondly, there's a lot of wind. And the closer you are to the microphone, the better. The less interference there is between your mouth and the thing that's picking it up, the better. So you'll see in studio, they'll be wearing lapel mics. Pitchside, they'll be absolutely holding a mic up to them. The commentators have lip mics, which are literally, they're almost like vacuum sealed to their mouth. In fact, they're so good at blocking out the noise that you actually have to increase the crowd noise in the mix, because actually the feed from the microphone is all you can't hear anything. It's absolutely
too eerie.
yeah, exactly. It's absolutely vacuum packed. But it's one of the things with lapel mics is during COVID, every single TV presenter had to learn how to put their own lapel mic on, which is it sounds simple, but it's they're so fiddly, and they've got a tiny little clasp, and you have to sort of drop the mic pack down your back or down your front, or if you're when we're doing House of Games, there's I can do my mic for all the shows except I started wearing like a turtleneck on for like a Thursday this year. And then Andre, our sound engineer, by the way, sound engineers do far more than just putting your mic on. That's a very, very small part of their job, but that is a part of the job that they would often do. But on a Thursday House of Games, when I was wearing a turtleneck, Andre would have to come in with lots of bits of tape, because by and large you can put a lapel mic literally on your lapel. But that really depends on, are you spending most of the show looking left, or are you spending most of the show looking right? So if I'm on a panel show and I'm to the left of the presenter, I will have my lapel mic on a different lapel than if I was sitting on the other side. If I'm the host and I'm in the middle and I'm looking both ways, I'll have it absolutely bang in the middle, which if you're wearing a shirt is easy because you put it on your shirt. But if you're wearing any sort of jumper, it's quite complicated. But if you want to be a geek about it, take a look at where different lapel mics are on panel shows, and you'll see it mirrors where they're sitting. But yeah, anytime you're out in the field in that sort of environment, then if you're filming, you'll have a big boom mic. But if it's just you'll sit there with a handheld mic and put it as close to your mouth as possible, because otherwise we ain't going to hear you. Good question, though.
Very interesting.
I like a handheld mic. I don't like it sometimes when you do events, you do book events and things, and they give you those microphones that you have to
Go
put
over
over your
your ear.
ears,
I hate those.
and you have it like a little kind of Madonna type thing. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't get comfortable. So I always ask for a hand mic.
Yeah, and then you have to take all your earrings off, not you, but I do.
Yeah, no, I have to as well.
Yeah.
All my piercings have to go because they interfere with the radio frequency. Final question. I love this question. Simon Beatty has a question for us. Ever since Twitter changed to X, everyone talking about it on radio or TV has referred to it as X, formerly known as Twitter. They do that in print as well. I find this really annoying. Is there a legal reason for it? Is it something that people are made to do? And if so, how long does it have to go on for?
Oh my God. Yeah. How long does it have to go on for? I feel like I can tell the intonation of what you're saying there. It's ridiculous. It's really annoying. And I just sort of feel like people are going to get it. It's fine. You don't have to explain the rules the whole time. It's like one of those shows that explains the rules all the time. It's very annoying. People know by now. And if they don't, I'm sure they'll pick it up. It's really not that confusing. But I quite like naming it the wrong thing because it would annoy Elon Musk. So I think it should either just be referred to as Twitter all the time and just pretend that not admit of his ridiculous name change. Although, when Facebook changed and it became Meta, which became the parent company of all the things, I know, do we have to bow to these people? I suppose you do, in the interest of accuracy, try and call it the right thing. But yeah, have we not moved past, as at the end of this question being answered, and I hope you'll have something to say on this matter too, Richard, but at the end of this question being answered, can no newspaper or broadcaster in this entire country just call it X from now on, everyone knows, or just decide to call it Twitter, but don't do both? Just be one of the ones. Just call it one way or the other. Have it as your style guide. We call it Twitter. We call it X. It doesn't matter. But don't do both anymore.
Listen, we're in a transitional period. It's like decimalisation.
But how long is this transition going on for?
Well, I don't know. As long as
like it's owned the website 100 years.
Well, I feel like maybe we can help put an end to it right now. I always call it Twitter. I always will, because that's what people understand it. Also, X written down can mean so many different things. Writing on X. I mean, what do you mean? It's almost like a typo. Whereas Twitter is called. So I will always, forever and ever call it Twitter. But yeah, X formerly known as. It's because X doesn't mean anything, and because as a brand, it has not broken through in any way whatsoever. Nobody in the real world is calling it X. In the same way that you call a vacuum cleaner a Hoover. It's just, you call it a Hoover is a Hoover is a Hoover forever.
Yeah.
And even a Dyson is a Hoover.
Yeah.
Right. And X will always be Twitter, because that's what people understand it. And if you do just write X, just even in a sentence, it doesn't look right. But also, if you are talking about it, writing about it, stop writing about it. Because I don't care what anyone's saying on it.
I should say that if you use trademark names as the general kind of catch-all phrase, you will definitely. I'll tell you who most aggressively protect their mark are Portaloos. If you write Portaloo in a news story, you will. By the way, we have about 10 legal warnings a year sent to The Guardian and all other newspapers saying, if it is a Portaloo, then please use it, or porter cabin. Don't just use it for any form of temporary loo or any form of temporary cabin. And they absolutely aggressively write in the whole time about this sort of thing. So I suppose technically Elon Musk, a free speech nut, could write in and try and enforce the usage of his name, of his website's name that he prefers, but he hasn't done it yet. Yeah,
Porter Cabin and Portaloo are both copyright. They're both trademarked names for the thing that like Hoover, that have become the thing. Tannoy is another one.
Yeah.
Tannoy is a trademark. So all sorts of things that if you ever write a script for the BBC, it comes back and say, don't say Porter Cabin.
Yeah.
Like, don't say Porter Cabin. You lost your mind. I always go, I'm going to say Porter Cabin. I'm saying Porter Cabin.
If you say it, they've got people who literally sit on the internet, and I don't know who. They've got a whole office, I think, who are just waiting for unauthorized uses or misuses of it because it isn't technically one of their products.
Perhaps it makes them millions.
I don't know. As far as they just constantly remind you of it, so you get these constant warnings. And we might find ourselves going, well, I might have in some way misspoken during that little segment, and in which case they will be notifying me, I'm sure, because they've got very, very sophisticated listening software.
Because I always think
they know any time. It's like the bat signal. They know when it's been misused, and they come down like a ton of bricks on you.
They have Porter listening software, because my classrooms at school were in Porter cabins, but perhaps they weren't.
No,
perhaps they were just in like brick-built post-war
We should say,
sheds.
for the benefit of the lawyers, that perhaps they weren't. It's unclear whether Richard's cabins were Porter cabins.
But I would say nobody calls it X. So call it Twitter or don't call it anything. But the best thing to do would be not to report on it at all. Can you imagine the joy? Because by and large, it's not a news story.
you'd have a much smaller amount of content produced every day, because huge amounts of stories are things that happen on it.
Oh, imagine if we had much less content produced every day.
I know.
That'd be a nightmare.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. Talking of content.
On that bombshell,
Yeah.
we will leave. But please join us again next week, where we'll be talking about a number of other subjects.
And don't forget, if you do have a celebrity name or an amusing name and you want to know what our top 3 Spielberg movies are, then we've got a competition on our hands, because we're going to choose one of the questions. But who's it going to be? If you're called Gina Lotta Brigida or something, or if you're called Lord Wakeham, and just anything.
Just just do write in.
Yeah, do write in.
And on that note, we'll see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.